Hello, my Bill 5000 Nation. How's everyone doing today? Hopefully, everyone's having a great day. If not, I hope it gets better from here. We are back with another Coffeehouse Crime. This one is titled When a Victim Catches a Secret Serial. When a Victim Catches a Secret Killer. I don't know why that was harder than what it was to say, but it was. Fuck it. Let's go ahead and get into today's story. Go ahead, turn them lights down low, put on something comfy, cup with something special. Let's get concerned. How so when the victim catches a secret killer. So she's dead too then. I'm just guessing. Well, I'm looking at the thumbnail and there's a lady. So I'm guessing she's dead too. I love knowing how people who get murdered by the killer catches the killer. Like, that's so crazy. All right, let's get into it. I'm excited. Go ahead. Yeah, I did that. Oh.
When 22-year-old student Mindy Morgenstern suddenly stopped responding to messages and phone calls, her friends immediately became concerned.
Fuck yeah.
Fast forward several hours, and
Let's
they
get
came
friends.
across one of the most horrific scenes they could have ever imagined. And Mindy, she had been murdered. The crime scene left behind
God.
depicted a very gruesome story, with plenty of small clues left in its wake. And once detectives set their sights on the killer, they were surprised to see just how deep his violent history ran. So, who is Mindy Morgenstern? Who was her killer? And how on earth was he able to obtain a job as a prison guard?
Anyone else thinks he kind of looks like Tiny? Zeus, ain't that his name? Friday, Debo. Anyone else thinks he kind of looks like Fifth Element? If you've never seen Friday, Fifth Element, he's the president of the world or whatever. Like, I love that dude. Oh, I hate that this motherfucker looks like him.
Lies, corruption, and a story that begins and ends with DNA evidence. Welcome back to Coffeehouse Crime, folks. My name is Adrian, and today we're looking at the terrible story of Mindy Morgenstern. By the way, I post stories like this up to 2 times a week here, so if that does sound like your kind of thing, please consider subscribing. It really does help me out. Let's dive straight into this one today, folks. Please grab yourself a coffee and let's caffeinate while we investigate. This is the case.
And while you're grabbing that coffee, if you want, you should be pouring it in your Bill 5000 mug, bro. I got this one. I got the Demon Slayer. I got the Angels Over Demons. I have camping mugs, whatever you would need to put your coffee in, I have at my store. Go over there, check it out, get you something, get you some good coffee, put it in there, and just enjoy. Just that's all you gotta do is enjoy. I don't know why I'm doing this number, but I was. Just go do it. Just do it.
Of Mindy Morgenstern.
Morgenstern. Why does that name sound
Welcome
familiar?
back, folks. Today,
Morgenstern.
we're in Valley City, North Dakota. Located in Barnes County, Valley City was established in the year 1874, after a railroad station had been constructed to help move goods through the county. Spanning only 4 square miles in size, and with a relatively small population that has never exceeded 7,000 people, Valley City is a very quiet town with almost nothing to shout about. Maybe it's the engineer in me, but the Highline Railroad Bridge nearby is a relic of old American engineering,
That's cool as
requiring
shit.
30 steel towers to be raised from the nearby terrain. Otherwise, the only other notable
That was
landmark
cool.
is the Vault Coffee Shop, an unmanned self-serve coffee shop, bakery, and bookstore. However, if you ask me, that sounds pretty soulless. I mean, where is that super annoying barista telling you dark stories going to be? Now, although this place is, for the most part, entirely silent, sadly, in the late summer of 2006, Valley City was about to be thrust into the spotlight for all the wrong reasons.
Oh shit.
It was on September the 13th that 2 friends decided to check in on their friend. Tony Bauman and Danielle Holmstrom hadn't heard back from Mindy Morgenstern for quite some time, which, to her standards, was highly unusual. Concerned for her well-being, and knowing that she had struggled with illness at various points throughout her life, they decided to travel to her apartment to see what was wrong.
That's some good friends right
Mindy
there.
suffered from multiple sclerosis, and so she
Aw.
needed good friends like this to look out for her. Upon arriving, they
that's
knocked
sweet
on the
thing.
front door, but both friends were greeted with silence. After trying the door handle,
That's some amazing friends right there. Man, you can't beat that. That poor girl. Man, I feel bad.
they realized it wasn't locked.
Oh,
and
no.
so, with that in mind, the two friends opened the door and stepped inside. And sadly, a terrible scene awaited them. About 2 steps in, they noticed something on the ground right before their feet. The lifeless body of Mindy lay sprawled on the floor, and something appeared to be around her neck. It became immediately apparent that someone had taken her life. The grim news of Mindy's death spread quickly around town, and soon enough, the area was swarming with officers and crime forensic detectives, as they began to secure the scene and investigate what precisely happened to this poor young woman. As detectives entered the property, they could smell a distinct and overwhelming smell of pine sol, a typical cleaning solution typically used in many American homes. So, one of the first questions to enter their mind was, did her killer try to clean up the evidence? A special
they?
agent involved in the case would later recall that a belt was found to be wrapped around her neck, and furthermore, a knife had been used so violently that the blade had broken off the handle in her throat. After identifying the victim as
Oh my
22-year-old
God.
Mindy Morgenstern, officers were then faced with the heartbreaking task of informing the family. They then traveled to New Salem, where they broke the news to Mindy's oldest sister. She took the news as anyone would expect. Heartbreak, pain, confusion, and anger. These are just several emotions felt by Mindy's family as they now tried to grapple with this terrible cocktail of feelings. As with most homicide investigations, the world now owed answers to the Morgenstern family. Mindy was dead, but nobody knew who was responsible or why. To be attacked or even murdered in your own home is such a common fear these days. Thankfully, most of us will never have to endure such a thing. But for Mindy, she unfortunately was the unlucky one. Now, it is worth noting that with Mindy's apartment being on the 2nd floor, she was far less likely to be burgled than her ground floor neighbors.
Yep.
So, can we rule out that possibility at this
Nope.
stage? Looking at the crime scene, Mindy's apartment was in a typical low-rise apartment complex, with stairs located in the main hallway leading up to her flat. Her front door led to a rather thin hallway, half covered with her own shoes and trainers amongst thick grey carpet. The only bedroom of the apartment was situated to the right of this hallway, with her lounge area straight ahead and to the left. Her TV, medication, phone, and other items were all left behind at the crime scene, indicating that whoever had killed her
Wasn't over
was
drugs.
not here for the money. Mindy's body was found on the floor at the fork of these 3 rooms, between her bedroom, hallway, and open-plan living area. It is suggested that perhaps she was dragged in from the hallway, and this meant that her body was clearly visible as you walked into the property. And with her purse, keys, and mobile phone all left behind, it couldn't possibly have been for the money. So, what was the motive, and why had she been targeted?
Probably senseless
Well,
bullshit.
before we take a look into the whys of this story, let's first look at who precisely Mindy was. Born on April the 29th, 1984 in Bogota, Colombia, Mindy grew up alongside her
Only
older
a
brother
year older
and
than me.
sister. Their time in Colombia was unfortunately short-lived, and Mindy and her siblings soon found themselves in hardship. As a result, she was eventually adopted by Larry and Eunice Morgenstern. Now, Larry and Eunice were a couple who lived with their biological daughter near New Salem, North Dakota. And it is worth mentioning here that this was only 4 miles from the apartment she was found in. Described by her friends as caring, outgoing, and compassionate, Mindy's family spoke of how she was always eager to help out around the farmhouse where they lived. She preferred to live in the real world, and loved nothing more than assisting with all of the chores and tasks around the property. After graduating from the New Salem High School in the local area, she studied at Valley City State University only a few miles away, where she majored in physical education. By the
Sounds
year
like a delightful young
2006,
lady.
she had entered her final year and was considering what to do with her future. With a keen interest in sports, most particularly basketball, she had plans to remain in physical education or something similar. Mindy was well known in the local basketball courts, and her childhood hero was Michael Jordan. Now, as mentioned before, sadly, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis while at university, which therefore limited her abilities in any of these events. But Mindy did not let this condition stop her. She remained involved by coaching her local basketball team and working as a lifeguard at the nearby swimming pool. Her diagnosis was actually part of the reason why she was living off campus and in her own apartment on 515 8th Street Northeast. This, of course, being a way to manage her condition and the risks associated with getting ill. At the time of her death, she was taking part in a trial where she was taking a drug similar to chemo, one that made her especially vulnerable to any ordinary illness that she might pick up from others. And so, as a result, she decided to reduce that likelihood of catching a cold by living alone. In addition to her active social life and her education, Mindy was also religious, and participated in services and choirs and playing multiple musical instruments. She was an incredible person.
It sounds like it, bro.
In her community and looked out for others. And tragically, due to no fault of her own, now she had been murdered.
It sounds like a lovely, lovely lady. It really fucking does.
As the terrible news began to spread, her family and friends struggled to come to terms with this tragedy that had now obliterated them. Meanwhile, and in the background, detectives were hard at work at trying to piece together a timeline that could hopefully try to find her killer. In the apartment where her body was found, detectives realized that, actually, nothing had been stolen whatsoever, including her purse, which was found next to her. Now, after speaking to her friends and family, it was noted that Mindy was actually with her boyfriend the night prior before she returned home just after midnight. She then spoke to him over the phone the following morning, telling him that she was meeting a friend at the library, so her boyfriend was no longer a suspect. Computer systems show that Mindy had been at the university library in the morning and had logged out just before 12:30 p.m. She then headed back to her apartment, as noticed by several witnesses and seen by multiple surveillance cameras. However, that is when testimonies and evidence of her alive began to dry up. In fact, she had stopped responding to phone calls and text messages at around 12:50 p.m, and by 9 p.m. that evening, her friends had entered through the front door to find her lifeless body. This evidence gave the authorities a relatively clear time frame. Mindy's death occurred within an 8-hour window, most likely happening shortly before 12:50 in the afternoon. It is noted that this is roughly the time that she returned home, and now all they had to do was identify her killer. But this would prove to be hard for officers to figure out. Mindy was well loved by all who knew her, and everyone they spoke to seemed to have a credible alibi at the time. As investigations began, detectives would reveal that a belt had been used to strangle her. In addition to this, her throat had been cut so viciously that a portion of the blade had actually broken off inside of her. Forensic analysis would also identify that DNA had been found underneath.
That's just straight up violent, bro. That is a very brutal murder.
Her fingernails, which in this story would be substantially significant evidence. However, who this belonged to was, at this point in time, anyone's guess. Saying that blind wonder would not last for very long. And in fact, a suspect was identified and then arrested only 1 week later.
Hell yeah.
That being Mindy's very own neighbor named Moe Gibbs. Now, despite detectives' suspicions, Moe initially seemed to have an alibi. Additionally, he was also working as a correctional officer at the Barnes County Prison nearby. The critical thing to note here is that a candidate who will work at a prison typically requires a comprehensive background check before being employed in any position of authority like this.
Yeah.
And so, as you will soon find out, the fact that Moe was even employed here was a massive surprise to detectives. Furthermore, the alibi that he initially provided to the authorities would not hold up for very long. You see, Moe claimed that he wasn't even anywhere near the apartment on the day that Mindy was murdered, and that, furthermore, he and his pregnant wife were actually in the process of moving homes. The truth is that, although some of these elements of his alibi are in fact true, it could not be proven for the entire time frame. and so officers decided to dig a little deeper. Investigators looked into Moe's records a little further and realized that, although he had been honest about his occupation and his location, he had actually concealed various elements to make himself appear more innocent. And so, all of a sudden, Moe found himself deep in the spotlight. So, at least initially, Moe seemed to pass their test without any notice whatsoever. However, as time went by, holes started to appear in his story and his personality. To begin with, his name was not actually Moe Morris Gibbs. In fact, he had changed it several years prior from Glenn Dale Morgan Jr. As it turns out, Moe, or Glenn, actually used to be an amateur boxer before then joining the Navy for a short while. However, his time in service was short-lived. And that's because Moe ended up being arrested, charged, and convicted of premeditated attempted murder, before then spending 5 years in jail of what was supposed to be a 10-year sentence.
Dude,
and unfortunately, you can already see where this story is going. You have to love those reduced sentences. Glenn's name change, which was dated back to the year 2005, was likely in an effort to try and distance himself from this murder charge.
Oh yeah?
And actually, he seemed to do that pretty well, because not even his wife knew about it. And that was not the only surprise that detectives found once they started digging into Moe's profile.
All kinds of
As you
shit,
may
probably.
expect, they would cover all bases by also looking at his love life. And it turns out that this man had many dark secrets. They learned that Moe had actually been married before to a woman named Tasha in 1991, when, at the time, they were both at the tender age of 18. Now, despite his conviction in 1993, she did end up staying with him, but only for a short while. In fact, after having a child with him, she divorced him in 1997, shortly before his release. Moe then married another woman named Melissa in the year 2002, only to divorce her 3 years later in 2005.
Damn.
The interesting thing here is that, while the two were still married, records show that 2 additional women made claims for child support against Moe, both for children who were born in 2003. So, it looks like our married man with dual identities also had multiple women on the go. Overall, the authorities discovered that there were at
It was spreading itself a little thin. Or thick, actually.
least 5 women who had claimed child support against Moe over the years before he had even moved to North Dakota. And of course, that is when he would meet Christina Judd. Christina, who was his current partner at the time, claimed that although he had admitted to having a criminal background, he had not actually been honest to her about the true extent of his crimes. Back to the authorities, Moe claimed that on the day that Mindy was murdered, he was working until 7 AM at the Barnes County Correctional Center before dropping Christina off at work between 12:30 and 12:40. And after that, he apparently returned back home to start packing. Unfortunately for him though, this placed him in the exact location as Mindy and in the same time frame when she had suddenly turned silent. And of course, this information made detectives very curious. An autopsy report concluded that the time of her death was likely between the hours of 12:30 and 1:30 PM, further confirming the overlap between Moe and Mindy. And then came the real hook and sinker.
Looking good for
the
you, Moe.
The autopsy would also confirm that the DNA under her fingernails did in fact positively match Moe. Not only would this be a solid indication that he was in fact responsible for her death, but he also had the wounds to go with it. And that's because, during his interview, detectives realized that he had freshly made cuts on his hands. However, that was not the end of it for Moe. Now that he'd been placed under a more scrutinous lens by detectives, they realized that his DNA actually matched another case not too far away. This one dated back to the year 2004 in a town named Fargo, and, no surprise, it involved sexual assault. And although the assailant had never been found, it looked like that was all about to change. By the way, it should be noted that Moe actually voluntarily gave his DNA to officers. So, I don't know what he was expecting. Between his DNA, his close relation to the crime scene, the injuries observed on his hands, and now his previous convictions, detectives believed that they finally had their guy. And furthermore, the evidence to prove it. As a result, he was finally arrested on September the 21st, 2006, on charges of first-degree murder, and without bond. But if you thought that Moe would make it easy for Mindy's family, sadly, think again. because 5 days later, he would plead not guilty,
Of
meaning
course.
that Moe had to go to trial. But thankfully, the prosecution were both ready and waiting for his response, and that very same day, additional charges were laid against him. These ones related to his workplace. Moe was hit with a series of very damning allegations. On that day, a total of 5 female inmates at Barnes County Jail came forward to accuse Moe of sexually assaulting them, leading to an additional 6 felony charges for these incidents with women who were under his care at the time. Due to the intense public scrutiny surrounding this case, the trial's venue was relocated to Minnow, with proceedings scheduled to commence mid-2007. The initial trial concluded in July of that year, resulting in a hung jury that could not reach a verdict after deliberating for 23 hours. The prosecution portrayed Moe as a sexual predator and suggested that he may have made advancements to Mindy within her apartment. Allegedly, when she resisted and rebuffed him, he then resorted to taking her life to save the skin off his back. In contrast, his defense team countered this by questioning the validity of the DNA evidence, and emphasized that fingerprints found at the crime scene did not actually match Moe Gibbs. Despite this, a retrial took place in October of that very same year, finally resulting in a guilty verdict and a life sentence without the possibility of parole. Maintaining his innocence until the end, Moe gave his own statement to Mindy's family, saying, "My heart and prayers go out to the Morgenstern family. This is a terrible crime that should never have happened, and I apologize that it did." During court proceedings, Mindy's mother addressed Moe to express her forgiveness, but also emphasized that she would never forget the harm that he inflicted on her daughter. She then extended her own sympathy to Moe's family and all of his children. Now, despite claiming that he was not guilty with Mindy, Moe did admit guilt to the cold case in Fargo, and furthermore, he also confessed on all counts of sexual assault from incidents at his workplace. The prosecution further suggested that Moe's actions were indicative of a struggle with sexual addiction, and it's also worth mentioning that one of the assaults against the inmates occurred on the same day that Mindy was murdered. As a result,
Really?
Moe was found guilty and convicted of sexually assaulting 5 inmates at the prison, with all of these assaults occurring between May 2006 and September 2006. In addition to this, he was also found guilty of the cold case in Fargo, resulting in sentences of 12 and 15 years respectively. These sentences were to be served concurrently with his existing life sentence, which, as it turns out, was without the possibility of parole. Surprisingly, many who knew Moe were actually shocked at his crimes. They remembered him as a dedicated, disciplined athlete who cared for his children. As of the time this video is being published,
That's crazy.
Moe Gibbs remains incarcerated at the maximum security North Dakota State Penitentiary, which is located in Bismarck. Currently, he is 51 years old. Despite enduring immense heartache, Mindy's adoptive parents have found some capacity for forgiveness. Eunice articulated a perspective by saying, "Forgiveness is acknowledging the horrendous act he committed, while surrendering the hatred and bitterness to God, as it's beyond our own capacity." She eventually channeled her grief
Hell yeah.
into writing,
That's
which would
wise.
eventually evolve into her publishing her own book named Mindy in 2019. And while nothing can be done to bring Mindy back, her family and friends have found some solace in knowing that Moe is no longer able to harm anyone else.
Hell yeah,
Mindy
bro.
Morgenstern was laid to rest at the Graceland Cemetery in New Salem, not far from the home where her adoptive family and siblings raised her. And while there is no doubt that the way she lost her life was terrible and unnecessary, her family and friends are determined to remember her for who she was in life.
Hell
For the
yeah.
happiness and the enthusiasm that she had, regardless of the situation. Her strong faith, shared with her parents, shone through in her thoughts of one day possibly becoming a missionary, and in the kindness that she used and treated everyone with around her. She is further remembered for her passion in both sports and music, and for the way that she never let any challenge or obstacle in her path slow her down. Despite the tragic circumstances of her death, her family genuinely seemed to have found forgiveness in their hearts. In her honor, a heart-shaped memorial in her name is erected on the corner of 9th Street Northeast and 5th Street Avenue Northeast. To this day, it stands in her memory as a reflection of the good that she provided, rather than the tragic circumstances of her death.
That has to be the sweetest fucking
Now,
thing ever.
thankfully, Moe will never see the light of day again.
Fuck yeah.
However, he has taken
Fuck that
several
motherfucker.
victims with him, not just in murder, but also in sexual assaults. And how he was able to obtain a job at a prison just simply by changing his name, honestly.
And like, okay, I know people go to prison because they do messed up things, but some things that you go to prison for ain't as bad as like murder and sexual assault. You know what I mean? And this motherfucker's in there supposed to be watching over them, making sure that, you know, they're safe from themselves and each other, is in there doing assault on them. Like, like prison's not bad enough, but you're gonna go in there and deal with that shit from someone who's supposed to be looking out for you? Fuck that. Man, this dude's just trash, bro. No one deserves anything he did to him. No one. Motherfucker deserves all kinds of shit happen to him, though. 51 years old. That booty hole ain't ever gonna go back, bro. But I guarantee you someone's gonna try to smooth them wrinkles out of it for you. Alright, I really enjoyed today's video. If you all enjoyed today's video as much as I did, please go down there, leave a thumbs up. It really does help the channel grow. While you're down there, if you want, go on over, slap that subscribe button, become part of the Built for 1000 Nation. We do some crazy shit here. If you want to know when that crazy shit happens, ding that bell. It might work for you. It might not. It probably won't. If it does, it will be late. That's just how it goes. But if it do, jump in on one of my premieres, go over in the live chat and be like, hey, Bill. Ooh, me and you, we share a secret ding. And I don't think we should keep it a secret no more. Let's ding the world together. And I'll be like, hell yeah. Leave a like and dip. That's all you got to do. As always, be good to one another. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Damn, Adrian, every time I watch one of your videos, man, it fucks me up for the rest of the damn day, bro. Need some better help shit.